spend very little time talking about Syria. What I'm going to try to do is give some key scientific points that will motivate a change of framework that will have to be developed by you. The topic here is not what I'm going to explain as much as the challenge that I hope you will engage in coming up with the actual solution for what's going on in Syria. We've seen a bunch of global crises recently. These are pictures illustrating pieces of the financial crisis. Here is the Arab Spring, which is, of course, a crisis of global proportion. There is ISIS, which not only involves local activity in a particular place, but people streaming there from elsewhere in the world, either to join it or to oppose it. And it represents a global threat in some sense. And there's just the recent refugee crisis, which I won't talk a lot about except to mention how it's connected to a bunch of other things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start in one place, which is here in Tahrir Square, and to pull on a thread of inquiry that we have been engaged in about the causes and consequences of these global cascading events, okay? So the first question is, why did this happen? Well, what's the standard answer that you will probably hear a bunch of times is that there were bad dictators. But these dictators were around for a long time. So that's not a good answer to the question of why it happened in 2010. I can't say now, right? So here's a better answer. These are the black line, which I would point to if I could be on a ladder here, is global food prices as measured by the UN index, the FAO Food Price Index, which is food for basic foodstuffs. So this is what is the price of food for poor individuals that buy grains and not processed foods in the supermarket. The red dashed lines are the dates of food riots and the Arab Spring. You see a connection? I want to build for you an understanding that we have about the circumstances in which ethnic violence takes place. And since ethnic violence is one of the major contributors to social disorder around the world, and is particularly relevant to what's going on in Syria, I need to talk about this first and discuss the solution. So normally, when people talk about ethnic violence, they talk about lots of different things: social, economic, historical, etc., things that people need to be concerned about. When we studied this problem, we identified a different approach which is based on geography. It's just based upon ethnic geography, where people of different types are located, are settled. And the fundamental statement is that there is a universal dynamics where individuals, if they choose or have a preference to be near others of the same type, they will cause, by virtue of where they move, a progressive creation of islands of progressively larger size of that type. Is that at this large scale behaviors of the social system, there's only one thing that I can talk about in any theory that I write down, and that's the size of the patches. Okay. So taking this insight from a physics approach, what we're going to do is we're going to say that ethnic violence is related just to the patch size. The question is, in what way will it be related to patch size? That's all I can say. And here's the argument. If people are well mixed, so if in a neighborhood you have multiple types, they're not going to fight each other. If people are separated from each other, so the patches are really large, they're not going to fight each other because they don't see each other. So the only possibility is that there's a certain size, in the intermediate size, where people will fight each other. Into ethnic violence. And yellow are the places of large events. How did we do? Incredibly well. There's a 90% geographical correlation. Implications about this are that neighborhood mixing is peaceful, right? Within a neighborhood, integration works. Second, large domains with smooth boundaries are peaceful. Third, patches of a certain size are a danger, but all you have to do is to create subnational boundaries appropriately, whatever that means. Our theory doesn't tell you what that looks like. And you're good. Even without doing a detailed analysis, that ethnic violence should play a major role in things that go on. And indeed, after the disruption of order happened in Syria, due to the Arab Spring, there is surely many reasons to believe that much of the conflict there is driven by ethnic violence. So we have to recognize that there is a food crisis trigger of disorder. There is an ethnic crisis that is arising from ethnic conflict. And somehow, if we want to create peace in this context, we have to address these issues in a way that will work. And remembering that there are going to be future shocks in the global system, the question is how to create a structure which is going to be robust and goes back to this issue of that it will be robust and it's a natural solution to the problem. Why don't people do this? Why isn't this being done already? Well, there is a global political consensus that says that we shouldn't do this. Where does that come from? Well, I mean, this is not my area of expertise, but I'll give you my understanding. There is the understanding that the global order is based upon nation states. This despite the fact that the United States is a federal system, as is Switzerland and some other places in the world, that seems to work, somewhat at least. I shouldn't say that the US works. We know that it doesn't really, but we'll talk about that some other day. In any case, assuming that nation states are the entity of control, it seems threatening to start creating federal systems that are going to lead to a possibility of deconstruction of that entity through separation, and that looks like a bad path to go down. But, and the other thing is that if you do a federal system, like any kind of separation, you have to figure out what happens with resources, and that becomes a problem that one has to think about. And so it's better maybe not to go that route. But my argument is we've got to move on, okay? I think that the existing structure is not working, and hopefully you guys are bright enough to figure out what's next. What is the next structure of world order that supersedes the Westphalia tradition and recognizes that we have different imperatives today, surely, than were present then, and that what we did then didn't work so well and isn't working today?